Imagine waking up one morning and discovering that the biggest advantage in life was never money, talent, or luck. It was a single hour that most people sleep through every day. It sounds too simple to believe. Yet, somewhere, while the city was still silent and the streets were empty, one poor man made a decision that quietly changed everything. But what happened after that decision became something nobody around him could explain. He wasn't born into wealth. He didn't have rich parents, expensive schools, or powerful connections. His family lived paycheck to paycheck. Every month felt like a race against unpaid bills. The electricity was cut off more than once. Sometimes dinner was just enough to stop the hunger, not enough to satisfy it. Every morning looked exactly like the one before. Wake up late, rush to work, come home exhausted, sleep, repeat. His life wasn't moving forward, it was standing still. But deep inside, something felt terribly wrong, and he couldn't yet understand what it was. He watched successful people from a distance. They looked different, not because of their clothes or their cars, but because they seemed to control their time while everyone else chased it. Every interview, every biography, every story hinted at something strange. Many of them talked about mornings, not just waking up early, but owning the hours before the world became noisy. At first, he laughed. How could waking up earlier solve years of poverty? It sounded like another motivational fantasy. But one sentence refused to leave his mind. What if success begins while everyone else is asleep? One cold evening, after another frustrating day filled with overtime and disappointment, he looked at his reflection in a cracked bathroom mirror. He barely recognized himself. His eyes looked tired. His dreams looked even more tired. He realized something painful. Nothing around him was changing because he wasn't changing. If he kept following the same routine, the next 5 years would probably look exactly like the last five. That thought scared him more than failure itself. So he made one promise. The next morning, he would wake up at 5. No excuses. He had no idea that this tiny promise would start a chain reaction that would completely reshape his life. The alarm screamed at exactly 5 in the morning. His body wanted to quit immediately. Every muscle begged for another hour of sleep. His mind invented excuses faster than he could reject them. Start tomorrow. You're too tired. One day won't matter. But something stronger spoke quietly inside him. If you lose this battle, you'll lose every battle that comes after it. He got out of bed. The room was freezing. Outside, darkness covered everything. For a moment, he wondered if he had made the biggest mistake of his life. But the real challenge had only just begun. The first few mornings felt pointless. There was no magical transformation, no sudden opportunities, no instant success. He simply sat alone with a notebook while the world slept. He started reading 10 pages every morning, then 20. He exercised for 20 minutes. He planned his day before anyone else demanded his attention. At first, nothing changed outside, but inside, something almost invisible started growing. Discipline. And discipline is dangerous because once it becomes part of you, excuses begin to disappear. What happened next surprised even him. After a few weeks, he noticed that work felt easier. His mind was sharper. Problems that once overwhelmed him now looked manageable. His boss noticed he arrived prepared instead of rushed. Small mistakes disappeared. Confidence quietly replaced anxiety. While his co-workers complained about Mondays, he had already won his first battle before sunrise. Nobody knew why he seemed calmer under pressure. They only saw the results. They never saw the mornings that created them. But there was something even more important happening behind the scenes. Every morning gave him one extra hour. 1 hour became 7 hours every week. 7 hours became hundreds of hours every year. While others spent those hours scrolling endlessly through social media or sleeping, he invested them. He learned new skills online. He studied finance. He practiced communication. He listened to books during sunrise walks. Those hours slowly became more valuable than overtime at his job. They weren't paying him today, they were preparing him for tomorrow. And tomorrow was getting closer than anyone realized. One afternoon, an unexpected opportunity appeared at work. The company needed someone who understood digital marketing. Most employees ignored it because it required skills they didn't have. But months earlier, during those silent mornings, he had been teaching himself exactly that. He volunteered immediately. Everyone laughed. They thought he was overconfident. But after a few weeks, his project became one of the company's biggest successes. Suddenly, people started asking him the same question: How did you learn all this? They expected a complicated answer. Instead, it began with an alarm clock. His salary increased, then another promotion came. He finally moved his parents into a better home. The bills stopped controlling every conversation. For the first time, his family breathed without constant financial fear. Friends called him lucky. Relatives claimed he had always been talented. They admired the outcome while completely ignoring the process. Nobody celebrated the mornings when he sat alone, exhausted, wondering if any of it mattered. Success always looks obvious after it arrives, but the real story was still hidden beneath the surface. As life improved, something dangerous quietly entered the picture: comfort. Success has a strange way of convincing people they no longer need the habits that created it. His mornings became less consistent. One skipped alarm became two. Two became five. Late night entertainment slowly replaced early discipline. The old excuses returned, wearing new clothes. You've earned some rest. You're already successful. Missing one morning won't hurt. It sounded harmless, but tiny compromises often become massive disasters before anyone notices. Within months, his productivity dropped. Stress returned. Deadlines felt heavier. His emotions became unpredictable. He found himself reacting instead of planning. The confidence that once made him fearless slowly disappeared beneath distractions. He wasn't poor again, but mentally he felt trapped exactly where he had started years earlier. He couldn't understand why everything suddenly felt difficult. Then one morning, while rushing late to work, he looked at the clock. It was 8:15. For the first time, he realized he hadn't seen a sunrise in months. That realization hit harder than any financial loss. He remembered something an old mentor once told him: Success isn't built by one great decision, it's protected by thousands of small ones. He finally understood. The 5 o'clock habit was never magical. The magic was who it forced him to become. Without realizing it, he had abandoned the very identity that changed his life. That truth hurt. But pain often becomes the beginning of transformation. And this time, he decided the comeback would be even stronger. The next morning, the alarm rang again. 5 o'clock. The room looked exactly the same as it had years before: dark, cold, silent. But this time, he wasn't chasing success. He was rebuilding himself. Every sunrise became a reminder that discipline doesn't care how much money you have. It only asks one question: will you show up today? Some mornings he felt unstoppable, other mornings he felt exhausted. Yet he got up anyway. Because motivation comes and goes, discipline stays. Months passed. He launched a small online business using the skills he had built during those quiet mornings. At first, sales were painfully slow. Some weeks he earned almost nothing. Doubt returned regularly. Family members questioned whether he should quit. Friends told him to focus only on his stable job. Pressure surrounded him from every direction. But something inside had changed forever. He no longer expected immediate rewards. He trusted the process. And sometimes, trusting the process feels harder than facing failure itself. Then came the breakthrough nobody expected. One video about personal finance went viral. Thousands of people shared it. Clients started arriving from places he had never visited. His side business slowly earned more than his full time salary. Eventually, he made the decision that once terrified him. He resigned. Walking out of that office wasn't just leaving a job, it was proof that years of invisible mornings had created visible freedom. But the story didn't end with money. His greatest victory wasn't the house he bought or the income he earned, it was waking up without fear. Poverty had stolen more than money from him, it had stolen confidence. Every unpaid bill had whispered that he wasn't enough. Every failed attempt had convinced him life belonged to someone else. But each morning at 5 quietly challenged those lies. Every sunrise became evidence that he could trust himself. And when you finally trust yourself, opportunities begin to appear where others only see obstacles. Scientists often talk about how the brain works best after quality sleep and focused routines. Entrepreneurs speak about uninterrupted hours before the world becomes demanding. Athletes protect their mornings because performance starts long before competition. Different industries, different lives, yet the same pattern appears again and again. The first hours of the day shape the decisions that shape the future. Coincidence or something far more powerful hiding in plain sight? Think about the average morning. The phone rings, notifications explode, emails arrive, social media steals attention before your feet even touch the floor. Within minutes, someone else owns your mind. Most people never truly start their own day. They simply react to everyone else's priorities. That poor man discovered a secret many people never notice. At 5 in the morning, the world asks nothing from you. Those quiet moments belong entirely to you. And what you repeatedly do in those moments slowly determines the person you become. People often ask whether waking up at 5 automatically creates success. Of course not. Millions wake up early and never change their lives. The real secret isn't the time on the clock, it's what happens during that time. Reading instead of scrolling, planning instead of panicking, exercising instead of complaining, learning instead of making excuses. Every small action feels insignificant by itself, but compound them over years and they become impossible to ignore. Just like compound interest transforms tiny investments into wealth, disciplined mornings transform ordinary people into extraordinary ones. There will always be reasons to stay in bed. The weather will be cold, the blanket will feel warm. Yesterday will have been exhausting. Tomorrow will seem like a better day to begin. Your mind will negotiate with you every single morning. It will promise that one extra hour won't matter. But life is rarely changed by giant moments. It changes through tiny decisions repeated when nobody is watching. That is where champions separate themselves from spectators. Years later, when people looked at the successful businessman standing on stage, they saw confidence, wealth, and influence. They saw polished speeches, expensive suits, and a comfortable life. They assumed they were looking at success, but they weren't. They were looking at thousands of invisible mornings, thousands of alarms answered instead of ignored, thousands of decisions made before sunrise, thousands of moments when quitting would have been easier than continuing. the greatest secret of 5 in the morning was never waking up early. It was becoming the kind of person who keeps promises to himself even when nobody else is watching. Because once you prove to yourself that you can win the first battle of the day, every other battle suddenly becomes smaller. Money can disappear, businesses can fail, markets can crash, opportunities can come and go, but a disciplined mind will always find a way back. Tomorrow morning, while most of the world is still asleep, someone will make a decision that quietly changes the rest of their life. Nobody will applaud them. Nobody will notice. There will be no headlines, no celebration, no instant reward. Just silence, an alarm clock, and a choice. Years from now, people may call that person lucky. They may admire the success they can see, but they'll never realize that everything began with one ordinary morning at 5 o'clock when an ordinary person decided that his future was finally worth waking up for.